Our story begins in the ancient land of Canaan. It starts with a young man named Joseph. He was the son of Jacob, a patriarch of his people. Joseph was one of 12 brothers, but he was special in his father's eyes. Jacob loved Joseph more than his other sons. This was because Joseph was born to him in his old age. To show this deep affection, Jacob gave Joseph a gift. It was a beautiful coat, a robe of many vibrant colors. This coat was more than just clothing. It was a symbol of favor. It set Joseph apart from his siblings. It was a constant, visible reminder of his father's special love. This favoritism, however, planted a bitter seed. Joseph's 10 older brothers watched with growing resentment. They saw the coat. They felt the sting of being second best. Reuben felt a pang of conscience and opposed shedding blood.
"Let's not take his life. Throw him into this cistern, but don't lay a hand on him."
When Joseph arrived, they grabbed him. They tore the beautiful, hated coat from his back. They threw him into the empty, dark pit. A caravan of Ishmaelites approached. They sold him for 20 shekels, and his long journey to Egypt began. Joseph arrived in Egypt not as a visitor, but as property. The vibrant, chaotic energy of this new land was a stark contrast to the desolation in his heart. He was a slave, torn from his home and sold in a foreign market, a nameless face in a sea of strangers. There, amidst the trade of spices and textiles, he was purchased by Potiphar, the captain of Pharaoh's guard. For Potiphar, it was a simple acquisition. For Joseph, it was the final seal on his descent into servitude. Stripped of his family, his freedom, and even the coat that marked him as his father's favorite, he entered Potiphar's house with nothing but the memory of who he once was. Yet, even in this place of bondage, Joseph did not surrender to bitterness. Assigned menial tasks and duties, he worked with unwavering integrity and diligence. He chose excellence when despair would have been easier. His character did not go unnoticed. Potiphar saw that everything Joseph touched prospered. The fields yielded more, the livestock multiplied, and the household ran with an efficiency it had never known before. Recognizing this divine favor, Potiphar promoted him, entrusting his entire household and all his affairs to Joseph's care. From slave to overseer, Joseph's fortunes had turned once again. It was clear to all that the Lord was with Joseph, blessing the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. But this season of favor held a hidden danger. Joseph was handsome in form and appearance, and his master's wife began to look at him with desire. Day after day, she sought him, her advances becoming more persistent.
"My master trusts me with everything in his house. He has withheld nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. How then could I do this great wickedness and sin against God?"
One day, finding him alone, she seized his cloak, demanding he lie with her. In an act of desperate integrity, he fled, leaving the garment in her hand. Scorned and furious, her desire turned to vengeance. She screamed and twisted the truth, using the cloak as false evidence. Potiphar, consumed by rage and betrayal, believed her lie. Without trial or question, Joseph was arrested and thrown into the king's prison, a place reserved for the most serious offenders. From the heights of Potiphar's house to the depths of a dungeon, Joseph's world collapsed once more. He had been faithful, yet he suffered a grave injustice. His righteousness had led him to ruin. In the darkness of that cell, it would have been easy to believe that God had abandoned him. But even here, in this forgotten place, the story was not over. Joseph found himself in the darkest of places, a royal prison. Falsely accused, his integrity repaid with injustice. It would be easy to despair, even to feel forgotten by God. Yet the scripture tells us something profound. But while Joseph was there in the prison, the Lord was with him, Genesis 39:21. God granted him favor in the eyes of the prison warden. His character and capability stood out. Soon Joseph was placed in charge of the prisoners. 2 new prisoners arrived, Pharaoh's chief cupbearer and chief baker. Joseph was assigned to attend them. One night, both had troubling dreams.
Why do your faces look so sad today? Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me your dreams.
The cupbearer dreamed of a vine with 3 branches. It budded, blossomed, and produced ripe grapes. He squeezed them into Pharaoh's cup and placed it in his hand.
The 3 branches are 3 days. You will be restored. When all goes well with you, remember me. Mention me to Pharaoh.
He dreamed of 3 baskets of bread atop his head. Birds came and ate the baked goods.
The 3 baskets are 3 days. You will be executed.
It happened as Joseph foretold. The baker was put to death. But the cupbearer did not remember Joseph. He forgot him completely. 2 full years passed. 2 long, silent years of waiting in the forgotten darkness of the dungeon. For Joseph, each day was a test of faith. He had been faithful, he had served well, yet he remained in chains, seemingly abandoned by the cupbearer whose freedom he had foretold. But even in the depths of that prison, Joseph did not despair. He held fast to the promises of God, trusting that his time of trial had a purpose, even if he could not yet see it. Then, in the opulent palace, the most powerful man in the world was shaken. Pharaoh, the divine ruler of Egypt, dreamed twice in one night. The visions were so vivid, so unsettling, that they left his spirit deeply troubled. He awoke before dawn, the disturbing images replaying in his mind, a sense of impending doom settling over him. He summoned all the magicians and wise men of Egypt, the most learned minds in his kingdom. But as they listened to the king's dreams, they could only offer confused theories and empty guesses. None could provide the interpretation Pharaoh so desperately sought. Their wisdom had failed, and the king's anxiety grew. It was in this moment of crisis that a memory sparked in the mind of the chief cupbearer. He suddenly recalled his own time in prison and the young Hebrew who had perfectly interpreted his dream. Overcome with a mix of guilt and urgency, he finally remembered Joseph. "Today I remember my faults," he confessed to Pharaoh, and told him of the man in the dungeon. Intrigued and desperate, Pharaoh sent for him at once. In a flurry of activity, Joseph was rushed from the darkness of his cell. He was shaved, clothed in fine linen, and prepared to stand before the king. From a forgotten dungeon to the dazzling throne room in a single moment. Before Pharaoh, Joseph stood not as a fearful prisoner, but as a humble servant of God, declaring, "It is not in me. God will give Pharaoh a favorable answer." Pharaoh recounted his dreams. 7 sleek, fat cows emerging from the Nile, followed by 7 ugly, gaunt cows that devoured them. Then, a second dream of 7 full, healthy heads of grain, swallowed up by 7 thin, scorched heads. With divine clarity, Joseph explained, "The dreams are one. God has revealed to Pharaoh what he is about to do." The meaning was a stark prophecy for the entire nation. 7 years of great abundance would sweep across Egypt, followed by 7 years of a devastating famine so severe it would consume all memory of the plentiful years. But Joseph did not stop with the interpretation. He offered a solution. Let Pharaoh select a discerning and wise man and set him over the land of Egypt. He advised Pharaoh to appoint officials to collect and store a fifth of the harvest during the good years, as a provision against the coming crisis. The plan was brilliant, and it pleased Pharaoh and all his officials. The king looked at the young man before him, a man whose wisdom clearly came from a source beyond himself. "Can we find anyone like this man?" Pharaoh asked his court. "One in whom is the Spirit of God?" Turning to Joseph, he declared, "Since God has shown you all this, there is none so discerning and wise as you." With that, Pharaoh set Joseph over all the land of Egypt. He placed his own signet ring on Joseph's finger, dressed him in robes of fine linen, and put a gold chain around his neck. In a single, breathtaking day, he rose from prisoner to prime minister. The forgotten captive was now second only to Pharaoh himself. A new chapter for Joseph and for nations had begun. At 30 years old, he stood ready to govern, his years of suffering having prepared him for this very moment. Through the wisdom God had given him, he would not only save Egypt, but also the very family that had sold him into slavery, proving that God's plan unfolds in ways we can never predict. By God's wisdom, he would save many lives. Joseph, now called Zaphanath-Paneah, embraced his role. He traveled throughout the land. The 7 years of abundance produced bountifully. Joseph gathered and stored like the sand of the sea. It was beyond measure. Records could not keep up. He started a family, Manasseh and Ephraim. Then the 7 years of famine began and spread across the earth. But in Egypt there was bread. People came from everywhere to buy grain. The famine gripped Canaan. Jacob heard there was grain in Egypt.
"Go down and buy for us, that we may live and not die."
Benjamin stayed behind, Joseph's only full brother. They stood before the governor and bowed. Joseph recognized them. They did not recognize him. His dream was being fulfilled. He accused them of being spies, beginning a test of their hearts. The famine of grain exposed a famine of the heart. Joseph was not seeking revenge. He was probing their hearts. He imprisoned them for 3 days. He kept Simeon and sent the rest to bring Benjamin.
"Surely we are being punished because of our brother."
They remembered his cries they had ignored. Hearing this, Joseph wept, then returned. He sent them off with grain and their silver in their sacks. The demand pierced their father's heart.
"I myself will be surety for him."
Joseph's final test, his cup in Benjamin's bag. Horror and disgrace overtook them. Judgment fell on the youngest. He offered himself in Benjamin's place.
I am Joseph.
The brothers were stunned, terrified. For years, they had carried the weight of their secret, a crime they thought was buried in the past. Now, standing before this powerful Egyptian governor who held their lives in his hands, the past had returned with breathtaking force. They couldn't comprehend what was happening. Then, the governor spoke, and the world tilted on its axis. "I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt." The words hung in the air, a death sentence and a ghost story all at once. This man, second only to Pharaoh, was the boy they had thrown into a pit. Seeing their terror, Joseph's heart went out to them. He spoke again, his voice gentle, not with accusation, but with profound grace. "Do not be distressed, and do not be angry with yourselves." He offered them a perspective they could never have imagined, a divine viewpoint that reframed their entire history. "It was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you." In that moment, Joseph wasn't just a victim of their cruelty. He was an instrument of God's providence. He saw God's hand at work through all the pain, the betrayal, the slavery, and the imprisonment. Every tear and lonely night, every dark, tangled moment of despair was a single thread in a divine tapestry, woven by a master artist into a pattern of redemption and salvation. The dam of emotion finally broke. He wept on their necks, they wept on his. Decades of guilt and grief washed away in a flood of tears. The news reached the palace, and Pharaoh, moved by Joseph's story, extended his own grace. He invited them to live in the best of the land, Goshen. Joseph sent them with provisions and a message of impossible joy to bring Jacob and all their households back to Egypt. And so, the family was saved from the famine, reunited and restored by the very son they had cast away. But years later, after Jacob died, the old fear returned to their hearts. With their father gone, they worried Joseph's forgiveness was only temporary. They fell at his feet and begged for mercy, offering themselves as his slaves. Seeing their lingering fear and shame, Joseph wept. He reassured them once more, his words a balm for their wounded souls. "Do not be afraid. Am I in the place of God?" He refused to hold the power of judgment over them. Then he spoke the words that would echo through eternity, the ultimate summary of his life and God's sovereignty. "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to save many lives. As written in Genesis 50:20, it is a timeless lesson in forgiveness, faith, and the mysterious, redemptive wisdom of God, who can take our greatest mistakes and deepest pain and weave them into a masterpiece of His grace.